Can you hear me? He says he sees me. Do you hear me? I think we are. He says he can hear us. So don't say anything you don't want your wife to hear. Got it? All right. Good to go.
Let me just edit the chat. You can get started.
What do you want me to start on?
Whatever you want.
Okay. All right. Hey guys. So I guess I gotta get started. Chet's figuring some technical difficulties out. So it's the second time we're figuring this shit out on the fly. So basically, what we're going to talk about is you've seen a lot of people talking about Massie for president in 2028. I have a personal opinion on that. And then along with that, we're going to talk about, looks like there's something about the nuclear family and it being, according to this, Nuclear Family Month in Indiana. And while I'm for the nuclear family, I don't know how I feel about worthless resolutions and proclamations about it. And then I wanted to talk about a few other things as far as Libertarian Party, being a little realistic, being honest, being an honest libertarian. A little conversation with someone that everyone knows, Archie Flower, who I shouldn't have talked to him because I know I shouldn't talk to him. Shame on me. But I did talk to him, and I told him that basically, honest libertarians would be nice. And then he was obsessed with getting me to tell him that he was lying instead of understanding the point of being honest, which is being mostly honest to yourself. So I guess we'll start with the Massie for president part and some of the libertarian stuff and what that happened and what led to the conversation, slight conversation I had with Archie Flower. So there's a guy running for the Kentucky 4 position, Jeremy Todd, and he got his signatures in. He's running as libertarian. He's going to be on the ballot. It's all good. Now, due to beautiful libertarian waste of time, people are fighting over this, saying who and who isn't a real libertarian. Not relevant, not a thing. There was a post that was made that said a genuine libertarian would have a shot at beating Galrine. That's what makes this worse. Well, the fact is a real, genuine libertarian, whatever that means, the difference between winning and losing? No, that's not. And so I prefer an honest libertarian because I've heard this from more than just Archie Flower. I've heard this also from like Dave Smith and other things, and in a little bit different vein, more in the vein of Thomas Massie for president, Thomas Massie doing other things. But let's first discuss the libertarian run, and then we can get into Massie. So, Massie lost. He was well known. He was relatively liked. Lots of support. Trump said no. The GOP boomer base sunk him. Massie lost. Now, okay, there's a lot of upset people, not in the demographics of boomers who are upset. Are they going to become libertarians? No, they're not libertarian. They're voting GOP. They're Republicans. Will they maybe be upset and switch over? Do they kind of feel like they're libertarians? Maybe. But the problem is that Massie's vote was, let's say, a little less than half. That was a little more than half. The libertarian candidate would have to not only maintain that same amount of cameras moving. Libertarian candidate would not only have to get all of Massie's vote, probably have to pick up some independents. And I find that highly unlikely because let's put it clear that the GOP was running against the GOP. In the end, regardless of who the actual candidate is in the GOP wins that district. Assuming the Democrat doesn't win. It's highly unlikely, based on the polling I've seen, it'll be the guy that wins. It's a deep red. It's going to go GOP. Now, that is interpreted by a bunch of people to think that a libertarian has a lane. Libertarian does not have a lane. They're not going to convert upset GOP voters to libertarian. The fact of the matter is that libertarian is not going to win. The GOP got a GOP candidate. The GOP candidate is going to retain the GOP base vote, and the GOP base vote is going to take them to the win. Now, is there a possibility if tons of money is invested? Remember, $30 million was invested in the primary. $30 million, which means there's a high investment on the GOP part. Do you think that the GOP is going to hand over the district to a libertarian for after investing $30 million? It's going to cost at least another $30 million to try and get a hold of it. On top of another $30 million to try and get a hold of the election from the GOP is going to get aggressive. We've seen after the national convention some stuff like, oh, there's a gay porn star producer that runs the LP. Okay, that's just libertarian on libertarian stuff. Get the GOP involved, they're going to pull up all the dirt. They're going to go after everyone if Jeremy Todd's a legitimate threat to the office. Now, can we make noise as libertarians? Can we make this the run of the season? Possibly. But we'll make noise. We can make a big stink. We can point to an issue. We can build for the future. Running for federal office is not going to get you a win right off the bat. You got to do some local offices. You got to build up your cred. And you also have to be able to take the heat. And the Libertarian Party can't even take the heat from itself, let alone take the heat from a major party like the Republicans and the Democrats. The Republicans will kill you. And then, if you are elected, if a Libertarian is elected, which is impossible in my opinion, highly unlikely. If a Libertarian is elected, the Republicans and Democrats will do everything to make them look horrible in office. They're going to have to either vote against their principles consistently or get nothing for their district. And in the end, they're going to be an utter failure. And being an utter failure is not going to look good. You're not going to see another person elected for several cycles after that. Considering we haven't even got anyone elected at that level in ever, it's just so highly unlikely. It's not going to happen. So arguing over whether a genuine libertarian or a real libertarian, whatever that means, has a shot at beating the Republican, not only is it like a long shot to even think a libertarian is going to win this race, regardless if they're real or not real, doesn't matter. Just an LP person. To then try and infight gatekeep who a real libertarian is to get the position, it's even less likely. It's completely absurd. It's living in La La Land. And I said, I prefer honest libertarians. We're not going to win. We're going to make a stink. We're going to force an issue. We're going to make them respond to us. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But saying a real libertarian would win, not a thing. And then being completely not self-aware, saying stuff like, well, you calling me dishonest or a liar? Well, let me put it this way. There are a lot of libertarians who are dishonest or lying to themselves. They think they get the right libertarian in, they're going to win. And I have it up on my Twitter profile. I have what's the song? In Search of a Hero, or whatever. It's the hero song from Footloose. Anyway, the hero song from Footloose, and I have like the singer gazing out in the distance with libertarians in search of a hero, or holding out for a hero. That's the name of the song. So holding out for a hero. Libertarians need to stop holding out for this mythical hero. There is no hero. It's you. You need to step forward and do the thing at your local level, where you're at, what you can do. You can't say, I need a real libertarian, I need a real hero to come out of nowhere, win this seat just by magic. It makes no sense at all. And then when someone says, please be honest, just understand the situation, to then lie to yourself or double down and say, like, tell me who exactly is dishonest or lying, is you're missing the point. It's going over your head. Now, I know the person that I had a conversation with, Archie, not not a very good example of your, maybe it is a good example of your typical libertarian, but it's not a good example of someone who is self-aware. And it became pretty obvious when talking to him. So let's put it that way. Jeremy Todd, I've met him. I like him. Good guy. He'd probably be fine getting the seat. He's not going to win. Can he make a stink and make something happen? 100%. And I think he should. And I think the Libertarian Party, which it appears like the Libertarian Party is pretty heavily behind him, I think the Libertarian Party should push as hard as they could on this race and make it a thing. Now, I don't think that we should be lying, though, and say that we're going to win. Or if we got the right libertarian, that we would win. But it's a good run. Now, let's go back to Massie. I'm hearing a lot of talk about, for example, I believe Dave Smith with Liam McCullen said, hey, I want to make Thomas Massie the next presidential candidate. Like he wants Thomas Massie to inherit the Ron Paul revolution. Until Trump is out of the picture, I really don't see how there's a lane to do anything. Massie might be able to run in the presidential run. He might be able to make a stink. He might be able to make a point. He's not going to win. And I don't think he's going to have as much traction as people really think he is. And this is going to be kind of this is going to be a take that a lot of people will disagree with. But Massie does have a little bit of a credibility issue problem where he has to understand that some of his actions where I understand politically why he would make them regarding things like Epstein and other things, they antagonized Trump, and I think he did it for a good reason, because Trump was not doing what Trump said he would do, and so Massie's going to try and force the issue, force him to do what he said he would do. But I think there's a couple issues in there that kind of are going to affect his credibility long term, and not going to have the results that we think. Also, 2 years is a long time. He's going to be out of the spotlight. People aren't going to know who he is. Justin Amash, people know who Justin Amash is in the Libertarian Party, but he didn't do very well when he ran for Senate last time. Trump said nah, and he finished like third place. Didn't do well at all in the primary. And in Michigan, we know who he is, but a lot of people disregard him. And unfortunately, I think that's exactly where Thomas Massie's going. And I don't think that there's an opening until Trump is out of the picture for someone like Massie to stand up. I just don't. I just don't think there is. Ron Paul had an opportunity because Bush was thoroughly, like, kind of hated by everybody, and he had been a consistent voice for decades and decades and decades, and he had built something. Massie, while he has built something and he has worked at things, he has not been around as long. And I think Trump is a different force than Bush, just straight up a different force. You're going to have to see Trump, literally, his influence has to go away, which means he has to die, in my opinion. Trump has to die. Massie might be able to stand up and get up, but I don't know. I don't really see Massie making a big splash in the Republican primary in 2028. He might try it, but I don't see him going. And yes, I do agree that I see someone mentioned in the chat Massie would be a net positive. I do think Massie would be a net positive, 100%. I just the thing I see is I see Dave Smith and people falling in line behind Massie. They're selling kind of what they sold once before. They found a new horse to sell, I'm not going to really call it a grift because I don't 100% agree that they're grifting, but they found themselves a new horse. And instead of Dave going to run for president in the LP, mobilizing a bunch of people to get involved in the LP, Massie is going to run. And if he can't run the Republican, maybe we can get him in the LP and try and use Massie kind of like Dave was used once before. And I don't think it's going to work a second time. And we'll just have to see how the cards lay out. That's a little more to be determined. But to think a real libertarian is going to win this race, it's not happening. Can you make a positive impact? Can you make a message? Yes. And can Massie, if he runs for president, have a positive impact, move the conversation in the right direction? Could he even run possibly as a libertarian, as a presidential candidate? Yes, he could. But again, it just seems like people are they're in search of heroes. They're in search of a hero that they can put up on a pedestal, that they can then say, hey, crowd, follow this hero, do this thing. And I see that as a failure of strategy because you're not building from the bottom up. You're relying on some top-down thing. And while it would be good advertising, it would be positive, it's not going to have the staying power that is needed. And we're going to have to search for another horse in another 2 to 4 years. And I don't think that's a realistic way of going about the situation. So we'll see what happens as far as Massie goes. I don't know if you've gotten the technical difficulties gone through. I'm pretty much don't really have much more to say about Massie and the guy running, Jeremy Todd. Great guy, to be clear. I don't have any problem with him running.
Well, what would be the pathway, like long-term pathway towards us getting to a libertarian for president or governor? You know,
Like everyone. I mean, everyone's focusing on Massie president, whoever for president, Ron Paul for president. It's never happening.
Yeah.
What should the focus be? Like, what should the strategy be to actually get us there? In simple terms, because
Well, so I think so. There's a couple things. One is that, and being a more decentralized, bottom-up party, there's an ability to have several things going at once. You just can't try and destroy each other. But I do think that we need to have on presidential years, we need to have a presidential candidate run. We need to be like, hey, we run a legit candidate, and and we're serious. You need to be serious about winning, but you shouldn't be unrealistic about or dishonest about your expectations.
Yeah.
So you can't sit there and say, "Hey, we're going to run a guy and we're going to win." It's like, okay, not realistic, not a thing. What are we going to do? Like, regardless of what people's opinions are, Lars in the last presidential election, when he was running for the LP spot, he said, look, we can't win, but what we can do is we can focus all our resources here and try and get this objective. And then we'll try and focus all our resources and get this objective. He had stepping stones at the national level. And people didn't really want to hear that. Now, do I think that would necessarily have worked? I don't know. But it's definitely more realistic than saying we're going to run and win. It's not going to happen. Even if you just say, hey, we're going to run and get X percentage, or maybe a percent more, and you just keep building on that over and over and over and over. And then, and yeah, I do agree. I do agree, Tim, that if you have a single issue campaign, you can move the needle. So, like, for example, let's use the last presidential election. In the LP, Chase sold himself as anti-war to the core. He is not a Democrat anymore because Obama was not really truly anti-war. So he could have been anti-war to the core. The problem is that when there were debates, even though they weren't with major candidates, which he was not ready for major candidate debate, to be clear, he would have been roasted even by Joe Biden. But in the race, he said he was anti-war to the core, but he came off as a moderate when it came to the anti-war message. His social media was kind of milquetoast. He wasn't aggressive. When he was in the debates, he was second fiddle on the anti-war issue. He wasn't calling for more war, but he was second fiddle. The Green Party candidate was more anti-war than him. And on top of that, I did keep track of, like, for example, his X account on social media. After the election was over and he definitely had control of his X account again, he became more anti-war.
Yeah.
So I agree. Taking a single issue and pushing it and forcing the conversation, I think would be great. Because what would happen is his campaign would fall into the same bullshit that everybody else does, which is Trump says something ridiculous, and then everybody thinks that they have to respond to that ridiculous post. So Trump talks about eating the cats and eating the dogs. Chase has to go to wherever this place was where these people are eating cats and dogs and say they're not eating cats and dogs. Well, it's like, look, we all know that Trump's a liar and exaggerates, and there's plenty of reporters who could go on the ground and prove that immigrants aren't eating dogs or the cats. But Chase could go to the border and say, look, if he wants to talk about the border issue, he could have gone to the border and said, look at all this horrific situation we have where people are hurt or starving or locked in cages. I mean, cry like AOC did upon the cages. Who cares? But if that was his thing, but it wasn't. His thing was anti-war to the core, and he came off as just not anti-war. And he gets very upset when you tell him that, but he comes off as not anti-war when compared to the competition. And so, yeah, a single issue, but you got to be hardcore about it. But I think that the presidential election is a messaging campaign. To get long-term success, like everybody and their brother says, but for some reason get distracted from, you got to focus at local level. Work local. Deal with your city councils. Deal with your county. Deal with the state. Work your way up and build support. If you get someone elected, actually do something. Improve the community. Help. You need basic support. Because if you just put someone in a high office and let them fail, that's not success. So higher office races like this run in Massie's district, Kentucky 4, like running for president, these should be messaging campaigns focused on specific issues, even one issue, and force the conversation to move. Push something. Make something happen. Be a pain in the ass for the other people running, meaning like Republicans and Democrats. Force them to respond to you. Force them to do something. Like in Michigan, I'll claim this all day. People dispute this, but Trump won the last election in Michigan. He won the state. The Senate race, he lost. The difference between winning and losing was the libertarian vote. Pure and simple. It was the libertarian vote. If the Republicans, and I am not endorsing any kingmaker strategy at all, but if the Republicans wanted to earn a libertarian vote, they needed to do something at that time. Do something that would be somewhat unpopular. Push legislation. They have plenty of power. Republicans had plenty of power. Even if they're not the party in power, they have the ability to push legislation to do things in their positions they have. Oh, we want Rogers to win. We want to encourage libertarians to vote for him. I do not endorse the party supporting Republicans in any way, shape, or form. We're talking about individual people here. But if they wanted to convince individual independents or libertarians to vote for Mike Rogers, they should have done stuff like actively tried to undo things that were points of contention. Mike Rogers was an FBI agent. If they had gone after FBI positions, if they had another thing was the FISA issue. Mike Rogers was pro-war and pro-surveillance. If the Republicans actively were trying to dismantle those things, they probably could have attracted some votes. That doesn't mean the Libertarian Party should endorse or support them or not run candidates. They could attract actual, legitimate, individual people's votes. And that's on the individual. The party has no control over the individual. So I think there's plenty of opportunity there. But force an issue, force the other parties to make concessions. And the thing is, all power is future power. So if they promise you things, and I know Trump delivered on Ross, but Trump promised a ton of stuff, and he delivered on Ross. Okay, great. But he also did a bunch of other stuff that is really pretty bad. So you have to make the painful decisions, unpopular, painful changes now. You can't expect them to do them once they're in office, because once they're in the office, they don't need your vote for forever and ever. Who cares? So, I think that's the strategy. Higher level office, message, push things, lower level, get elected, do the work, build the brand, build the reputation, work your way up until you're running stuff. to ultimately shut it down. But yeah, I don't know. Any other questions on the kind of that strategy thing? Do you think Massie should run for president in the GOP? I'm not saying he shouldn't.
If he's going to run, I do think he's got the best chance if he runs in the GOP. I don't think he really, despite his popularity in the Libertarian Party, I don't think he'll get enough general support running in Libertarian Party.
Yeah, I
Like
have
to actually win. If you're doing it for messaging,
Yeah,
I would say if you don't expect to win, if you're Massie and you don't expect to win, then yes, tell Republicans, fuck you, get out of there, and go join the Libertarian Party. Say, I am now a Libertarian. The Republicans have lost sight of the picture. You know, he can do his whole list, like, you know, deficit and, you know, all his, you know, he can go through his whole list of issues. This is where the Republicans have failed. This is where the Republicans have failed.
Yeah.
This is why you should not support this party. This is why I have left the party.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the party didn't. I haven't left the party. The party left me, kind of.
Okay.
No, that is where I think he should run as a libertarian.
Yeah.
But if he's actually trying to win, I think he should run in the Republican Party. Say we need to get back to these things, and I would fully expect if he tries to do that, he's going to get shut out in a primary.
Yep.
Not legitimately. I think he could possibly have a genuine primary. He could genuinely win in the primary if it wasn't politics. But the Republican Party has just kicked him to the curb.
Yeah.
They're not going to allow him to win the primary.
They're not going to let him win. No.
So if he tries and he succeeds, you know, takes over the party despite the party, then by all means run for president. Otherwise, if he plans to run for president, I would say he should, you know, abandon the Republican Party, say they failed me, and join the Libertarian Party and say this is where I align.
I have a feeling there's going to be some problems, though. I mean, I know that you and I probably don't have very many problems with Massie. And probably a lot of people watching don't have a problem with Massie. Probably like him. I know that there's a reasonable amount of libertarians who are not fans of Massie. I know that there's a reasonable amount of libertarians who think running Massie is just trying to run a. There we go. Like trying to run, basically, is trying to support. Support. Basically, is trying to use the LP to support Republicans, and so I know that there's going to be some hesitation there supporting Massie. So we'll see.
Yeah. But that's only saying if he runs for president, though. I don't necessarily think that he should just run for president.
No,
You know.
I think I think he could probably run. He might be able. So I'm not from Kentucky. I don't know much about Kentucky, but he might have an opportunity to run for something in Kentucky. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm talking about like state level, not federal level.
Yeah, he could run for governor or something.
Yeah, I think
another.
Tim makes a thing. Could his run spark a Tea Party 2.0? So I think that there is an opportunity to spark small, kind of resistance resistance groups. But one of the things that is on our list is like what we think long term and other things. I personally think that we are in a authoritarian swing right now. Like when I watch, for example, Dave Smith interview Nick Fuentes, I see Dave moderating his position heavily and Nick giving zero ground and holding firm, being radical, which I think is radical for him. I'm not saying radical in a good way. And I think there's a lot of support for more authoritarian viewpoints on things right now. And so, as far as liberty goes, I think that there's always going to be an opening for liberty. There's always going to be a small percentage of the population. I don't think you'll ever get the whole, like a large portion of the population to make a swing. But I really think that if we're thinking about liberty, it's like we're really trying to push for it. Not that people should give up, but I think we need to have a long-term mindset, like a 2050-ish mindset of we need to educate a new generation. There's a lot of people who are stuck in the polarized team sports politics right now. And I think they're really going to struggle in the short term. When I say short term, the next like 2 election cycles, I really think they're going to struggle in the next, 2 presidential election cycles to get past an authoritarian bent. Trump is very authoritarian, totalitarian, whatever you want to say. He has, which Republican Party has been this way for a long time, but he has thrown away any conservative notions of liberty being a conservative concept. Just we're trying to conserve the rights we have or maintain the level of freedom we have. I think that's out the window. The Republican Party has embraced, which the Republican Party has always been a progressive party, but the Republican Party has embraced a authoritarian progressive mindset. Constitution be damned, do what we want, go as hard as we can until they stop us. And I think in the next election cycle, regardless of who wins, they're going to take that power and they're going to use it. So Trump pushing the limits of the Constitution today, if the Democrats win the next presidential election, they're going to say, hey, precedents, we can do it, bang, let's use it. And I think it's going to take a generation of people growing up, seeing that, to really get a true spark of people wanting liberty again. That doesn't mean I don't think that there's not going to be liberty-minded people. I just don't think I don't know if it'll ever be electorally successful, but I don't think there's short-term success right now in liberty. As far as politics go. Might sound kind of crazy, but I don't think there is. And so like that brings me another thing that I was talking to someone about, which of course as soon as I want to talk about it, it goes away. So there was a question, there was a thing about like Libertarian Party, is it coming back? Posed somewhere, sort of. And so I was kind of like joking around that we need to vote harder for democracy. And what I did say is that we need to have like less bylaws, platform, stop arguing. This is Libertarian Party stuff. Like less bylaws, platform. Everyone is here for election of officers, so we need to focus on things. This was someone commenting on the recent convention. And I was like, we wasted time on a bunch of bullshit that we didn't need to. We should have focused on why was everyone there? Elect new officers, do XYZ thing, and get it done, get out. But the Libertarian Party, for a future of liberty, to be able to use a Tea Party 2.0 movement, we need to build bottom up, and we need to have a culture of excellence. And what I mean by a culture of excellence is I don't mean like we need to have dress codes. I don't mean that we need to have a lot of money. I don't mean that we need to have a lot of electoral votes. We need to have a culture of excellence in the party and really be who we are, be radical, and really push for liberty. It means stop fighting over stuff that doesn't matter, like bylaws. They don't matter at all. Um, and so that kind of gets me into what I think the problem is in the United States and why we are struggling to get a real foothold liberty wise is that in the United States, we have a philosophy that is not of excellence, and the Libertarian Party is falling into that trap of not being excellent. So we have a philosophy in the United States of not being excellent, of mutual respect, of upholding ideals of the Declaration of Independence. And remember, the Constitution is enforced by the people. The people are what make the Constitution happen. The Constitution is complete garbage unless the people want it. They have to maintain it. They have to live by it. They have to, and it's clear that, especially with Trump right now, that there is no interest in that at all. And so people have to learn the hard way, maybe, the error of their ways, and then say, okay, we need to, as a people, enforce the Constitution. I don't know if it'll get there, but like right now, we have a society that is like top down, it's central government, blood and spoils. I like to listen to like Jacob Hornberger on this a little bit. Is that Jacob Hornberger talks about, you know, if you're out there, for example, the war on terror, if you're out there thinking it's fine to blow up a village of kids, and you have such you have such poor morals and ethics that it's perfectly fine to be out broad killing people. What do you think is going to happen at home? Like, if you don't respect people, people are people. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like, a person in the United States, while I care about a person in the United States more than I care about a person in, Afghanistan, a person is a person. And if I completely disregard that person's life rights, show no respect, no mutual respect at all, which I think the United States clearly, as the government clearly shows no respect to the people in other countries. Why would we think that they would show respect in the United States? And I think what's going to happen is that people, because of that, they're going to be fearful. It leads to this polarization, this division that we have today. And it's going to lead for a focus on controlling the power that then allows you to force things down upon people's lives. And so someone asked me about that. They said, "Well, does that mean you don't think that that politics really have a future?" And so there's two parts to that. One is kind of an understanding that I think human interaction, education, philosophy, it's a never-ending struggle. We're all always in a constant, revolving thing. Some people say it's, good times make weak men make bad times make strong men. Cycle. There's a few other things, history repeats or history rhymes, those kind of things. But humans are, we're capable of molding our environment, being self-aware, but that comes with a trade-off, which can be destructive. And so politics, like government institutions and trying to control government institutions, that might not be something that is realistic. Especially from like a Libertarian Party perspective, it might not be realistic to control major government institutions, at least not in the short term. I'm talking, when I tell you I think we should control an institution, I'm talking like, should we control it in 2050? A problem with institutions is you always tend to get this bureaucratic mess that tends to be anti-liberty in my mind. So I don't know if trying to control the institutions is really going to work, especially right now. And then on top of that, but so in politics or in government, politics thought of as in government institutions, that might not, there might be no future there. But politics, as far as like human interaction with each other in society, there's always going to be politics of people interacting with each other. Always. It's never going to go away. So we're always going to be involved in politics in some way, shape, or form. And so, at a fundamental level of the individual, dealing with issues, dealing with disputes, we're going to have politics. And then it can even be a little bit higher when you're talking about like a community or organizational level. But as politics gets more and more and more abstract, so fundamental level, the individuals dealing with resolving a problem, politics of that. But then as you get more abstract and you layer on layers and layers of abstraction, by the time you get to a central government, it's really going to be difficult to control that institution, and I think it's a bit of a pipe dream to think you can control it. Like fundamentally, the United States is too large to control from a central government. Need to decentralize, and and to decentralize, I mean, the United States is still a fairly decentralized country and can be much more. Like if you get control of your county, for example, you can say, hey, we don't want state funds to pay for, I don't know, schools of some sort. I don't know, I'm making something up. And you get a hold of, the state, and the state says, we don't want federal funds to pay for roads. And as you disconnect yourself from the federal government in that way, money-wise, the federal government loses a lot of its power because a lot of its power is through proxy, which I believe has been ruled as unconstitutional in the Supreme Court several times. But they still do it. Don't. I don't know. So I don't know. We'll see exactly. I don't have much more there. If you had any other questions about things, I guess example of central like government exceeding its thing and central planning is this proclamation. Indiana as a state says, nuclear family consisting of one husband, one wife, and biological adopted foster children is God's design for family structure and has been the foundation of society since the creation of the world. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of tribal societies that really work together, and it wasn't as pure like one family kind of nuclear family thing, even though there were family units. But to me, this is an example of the problem is what's stopping, what's stopping Illinois, which is way more, let's call it woke than Indiana. What's stopping Illinois from saying the gay family is the foundation of society? Like what's making them do that? Stop that. Like I don't. So I mean, it's a proclamation. It doesn't really matter. But again, I think it's trying to make something a thing that isn't a thing, and it's not even the place of the government to be even deciding these kind of things. Like especially like right now, we're in the middle of Pride Month, and everyone talking about Libertarian Party was the first party to want equal rights. Gays could be married. I'm like, well, first off, to get married, you have to get a marriage license. To get a marriage license, you have to put your name on a piece of paper and put yourself in a registry. Okay, you're a minority group registering yourself with the government. That sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Let's just self-register. Like how many Jews in Nazi Germany just said, okay, the Germans want to kill me, so I'm just going to self-register that I'm a Jew who lives here so they can come find me and kill me easier. I don't know. I don't understand that. Like it makes no sense to me at all. Why? Why is that the thing?
Yeah, the Jews being registered, they were force registered.
Yes.
But it is,
Think if you demanded to be registered.
yeah, if they had demanded, I
Yeah.
want to be registered, which there was a book I read a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I forgot what it was called, but
Yeah.
it was a book about basically a 24-hour span of a bomber crew getting ready to go bomb some facility in Germany.
Okay.
And it was 24-hour period of, this crew getting ready and the people in the town in Germany that was going to get hit, which I don't think was their actual target, but irrelevant. But in that, there were people who were. There was a guy who wanted to marry a Jewish girl, and he had been registered as a Jew because he had lobbied to get registered as a Jew so that he could marry her. So there,
Well, like some interracial marriage thing?
yeah, it was like it's illegal to marry interracially with the Jews, and so
Where was he from?
this is in Germany.
No, they were bombing Germany.
But
he's from Germany.
The story was from both sides.
Oh, okay.
So the story followed, the bomber crew and this town that was about to get bombed, and just they didn't know it. But
okay,
yeah, it's hard to imagine a situation where, why would you want to be on a registry? Why do you want to be, like, to me, I don't understand it. I can see, if there were certain things that you're not allowed because you're not on this registry, then I can understand why someone would lobby to be put onto a registry.
Yeah.
But in marriage, I don't know what the government's actually giving me to be married.
Well,
like,
a lot of people, they want marriage because it comes with like tax things or certain status things, like if you get sick and various other things of that nature.
right.
And I think that that's perfectly, having a civil union or whatever, that's perfectly valid, I guess. But I mean, I don't think the government should be doing that to begin with, having these special classes or whatever. Let's see. Tim mentioned, what about a property registry to establish ownership? Now that gets fun. That gets a little deeper though than just okay. So property. So you can get property through homestead or through contract, purchase through contract. The government influence on property is it is an interference at all. It's an interference. So the thing about property is that it's about how you communicate with others. Like, for example, if you put up a fence and have like a do not trespassing, or deeds and titles are true, which I think is being brought about registry for property. But I don't necessarily think you need to have, in the system we insist the government has these property registries. But in a property rights mindset, not necessarily a government mindset, you need to communicate with others that it is your property. And there's plenty of property out there that we all have that we don't register with the government. It's pretty clear, for example, like I own a t-shirt. I'm pretty sure Chet has a t-shirt almost identical to mine. How do we know whose t-shirt it is? Well, I am properly communicating it's my T-shirt by putting it in my closet and folding it and things of that nature. It's a very basic like T-shirt thing. When it gets to property, when you're talking about like land, you could do it in a way that does not need the government or central government deciding the property. I would argue that the trade-off for government property registry is not worth it because the government having a registry of property, I think the threat to your property through eminent domain, taxes, and other things is much more a threat than the reward you get from having a deed to prove that you own the property. I think that it's like I've never walked up to land that has a do not trespass sign and said, take me to the county clerk's office and show me the deed to your property. Therefore, I know I'm not trespassing. I see a no trespassing sign and I go, yeah, I don't want to go through that. Like I respect the trespassing sign, because it's a common custom. They're communicating to me. Possession. Yeah. Possession. It's property. You could possess property, but you have to communicate to those around you that it's yours. So like, it's kind of obvious. If this can, I'm physically gripping this can in my hand. I possess it. It's pretty obvious that it's my property. But like, let's say if I set the can down on the table, is the can now mine still? I think it's pretty clear through social norms that it's my property still, but I don't physically possess it at this moment in time. I don't think it's realistic to expect you to physically possess every piece of property that you have at any time. Yeah. So I think a lot of it has to do with societal norms, identification, communication, and yes, having a deed at like your county or wherever on a government registry. Yes, that is a way of communicating and identifying, but I would say the trade-offs aren't worth it, and also it's much more effective to put a do not trespassing sign or to have a dog trained to walk around, your yard.
Yeah. There's also, you can have arbitrary, so if you leave that can.
Okay.
So you set the can down.
Yep.
You say it's your can. I pick it up, and you tell me, no, that's my can.
Yeah.
I say, no, it's my can.
Yeah.
You can prove that it's your can through means like your tab is not crooked. All my tabs, I turn.
Yeah.
So therefore,
yeah,
this is not your property.
We have norms. We have norms to identify what is whose is whose.
Yeah, and like the Wild West horse rustling and cow thieving and stuff. There's a reason they branded the cattle.
Yeah.
It was so that we have an identifier that this is our property, not your property.
Yeah.
It wasn't a deed registered at the county that said, this is my cow. It was a physical brand put onto the cow. Yeah. You are saying, this is my property. You're identifying it as your property. So in the case of arbitration, you can prove ownership.
Yeah. Well, and also as settlers moved west, back in the day, initially there was little to no government at all. Now they may have like logged a claim to the property, for example, like we homesteaded this chunk of land and we've done things to it to comply. But the Native Americans or other groups of individuals who you'd interact with, they wouldn't verify with the government first that it was your property or not. So you had to identify it or with the norms and customs. I understand there's conflict. I mean, there's conflict with property today. I mean, like I know that I had a neighbor who had a conflict with a property issue because what was the thing? Like there's like an easement issue with his neighbor. So there's like some sort of an easement or being too close to the property line. And so he was trying to build like a shed too close to the property line. And so he had to there was some sort of conflict there. So just because there's a deed doesn't mean there's not a conflict that occurs. And they had to go through it was crazy to build this shed. He had to go through a public. He had to put. I think they had to put it in the newspaper, and they had to go through a public comment period where people could comment whether he should have a shed or not. But anyway, that's kind of property. But I mean, I don't know. Registries in general, they don't need to be with the government. Let's put it that way. In general, I think the trade-offs aren't there. Deeds and titles saying, well, for now that might be not worth tackling, but there's plenty of things that are worth tackling. We don't need to deal with some. What else do we have on our list to talk about?
Well, we kind of got sidetracked on just the property issue of.
Yeah. Now, Tim did mention that the proclamation seems more like an advertisement to attract the right kind of people. Kind of like how LPNH, wants to attract a certain type of people to New Hampshire. Which, if we're talking libertarian stuff, that makes sense. I don't know how many people listened to the most recent Tom Woods with Kaufman, but Kaufman was 100% correct when he was talking about, you want to attract the most radical portion of society. You want to attract these people who are going to be in it, like through thick and thin. You don't want like masses and masses of people right off the bat. You need to attract like your most radical, your most zealot kind of people who believe in the mission, who believe in what's happening, and are willing to put in the work. And then as it becomes a thing, you get the follower effect, and you get a bunch of sheep, a bunch of sheeple at the end. But yeah, I think he is correct. Now, I do think there's a way of being radical and attracting people that you want without causing what appears to be harm to others, which I think is a lot of people. One, I think a lot of people are scapegoating. They say, "Oh, the LP fails because of LP&H and their messaging," and I think a lot of people blame that. I think we talked about this last episode, but a lot of people blame that on that. But at the same time, it is bad form to, screw everybody else over to try and get like a short-term win or something. So
Yeah, well,
it depends on who you're attracting.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about earlier with building up.
Yeah.
Yeah, building up the I guess grassroots.
Yeah.
We want to build up the party as a grassroots party, bottom up.
Yeah.
So that we're improving our local communities and then growing out from there.
Yes.
And I guess the LPNH strategy to me seems like a semi-top-down.
It depends. I mean, they're trying to attract a certain person to their area. The problem is that they verge too often into non, like, I mean, if they're trying to advertise as something that they're not, that's one thing. But they seem to dip their toes in. I don't know. Lost it. Battery died.
I think so.
Hmm?
We might have. Yeah, the battery might have died. Let's see.
We're dead. Oh no.
Oh, hold on 1 second.
All right. While Chet takes care of our technical difficulties,
Because we have spare battery.
which I hope you charged them.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So while Chet handles that,
Not that last one.
so I mean, what we were talking about though, like I think that, like, what Kaufman was talking about in his interview with Tom Woods, he was discussing attracting a small group that'll stick with you, and then you moderate your message later on. And I think he's 100% correct on that. I just don't think a lot of times the message he's selling is libertarian. So I get, that's where I get a little confused. Let's see, what other questions we have on this list. Hopefully the camera doesn't die this time. It did.
Yep.
So that part didn't work out. You got it?
Yep.
We're back.
Well, I think we should. I think we should go.
Okay.
Off on a. So keep on this proclamation a little, because there are some other things that I was thinking about it.
Okay.
So kind of summary what I said.
With the proclamation?
Yeah, because I made a comment about it earlier, and so the first problem I have with it is, I mean, besides it's being an executive order and trying to, I don't think any of this has any place in our government.
Yeah.
But setting that aside for the moment, I do think we have a society where we profess a separation of church and state, and we say that we are a society that wants to welcome a diverse populace, but we're going to set our government proclamation on the basis of religion. Like, the first point that is made, you say, all right, you define a nuclear family: husband, wife, children, biological or adopted.
Uh-huh.
And then you say it is God's design and has been since the creation of the world.
Yeah.
Now, I can personally believe that it is God's design since the creation of the world. And many people can believe it was God's design. But that's not something that I can prove to an atheist. It is not something I can prove to a Buddhist. So anytime that we are having anytime that we are setting up an argument for something in our government, it should be able to appeal to a secular mindset as well as the religious mindset. So you can make the nuclear family argument without it being because God said so. You can make the argument that the nuclear family is better. You can define the nuclear family first, and then you can go through and say, all right, why is the nuclear family husband, wife, children?
Okay.
Why are these three things key in raising good society?
Well, I do think in the second part,
Yeah, and they move on to that. They
Yeah,
so
I think
all
in
the
their
other
second
parts.
whereas, so I can point on my drill bit, which no one can read. But in
Yeah.
the second whereas, it does say research reports that children living with their married biological parents have better physical and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're not specifically citing what research, but I'm not
Well, yeah.
I'm not saying they made it up. I'm sure that there's research out there. I've seen research. So
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with it.
Yeah, and you're not going to fit all that research onto a one-page broadsheet. So that's fair. But
Yeah,
later, Tim.
yeah. We'll probably wrap up here in a little bit. Shortly. Yeah. So.
But
Uh-huh.
besides them claiming it is God's will,
Okay.
and that's a simplification maybe, but
Yeah.
besides the statement that it is God's will,
Yes.
I don't disagree with what the proclamation states, because it is saying that the nuclear family is what was it?
So,
It recognized that growing and strengthening families is critical to the future of the United States.
Yeah.
In summary.
Yeah.
So
next 250 years. Yeah.
yes. And I agree with that. And you can definitely prove that you need heterosexual families because you can't create families homosexually. Like yes, you can adopt.
I
But
understand.
you do need the biological act. We're not at a technological point where we can be asexual beings.
Yeah.
So promoting it for the pure reason that we need to have more children born for the society to grow and continue. You can make that argument, and you can have. You don't need to bring in religion to it to make this argument.
Yeah.
Now, given that they are setting Nuclear Family Month at the same time as Pride Month,
It's a culture war thing.
it's a culture, yes, and you are claiming religion in the outset of the argument. Yes, it is clearly just a culture war red herring. They just want to get people to fight. I do not think that this proclamation is going to bring people into the state.
In the end, you don't think so? I don't know.
If this, however many words on a piece of paper is all it takes for you to move to a state, then we can produce a lot of better words and get people to move to our state. If that's all it takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are other factors that go into bringing people into a state, and it is not a proclamation from the governor or a Twitter feed in New Hampshire. So either way, I don't think that they are in themselves doing things. There could be other things that Indiana is doing to encourage people to come in, like they could be saying the climate's good. We have nice, 10 square miles of lakefront property that we, on Lake Michigan because we're a Great Lakes state. They could tell lies like that.
Yeah.
Because their lakefront property is not great.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's on its side, but
So I think the problem I guess I have with the proclamation, where I do know that was mentioned in the chat, it might be signaling to people
sentiment that it is strictly like if you look at this in a vacuum, I agree with the sentiment that it is promoting.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm opening that vacuum a little bit, I am going to have concerned about bringing God and government in together.
Yeah.
Because I do not think that they belong in the same place. I think we need government to, arbitrate property issues, and we need God to arbitrate whether or not we are good people, morality.
Kind of, but I mean, okay. So let's kind of, from a religious aspect, why would a religious person want government to be involved? Unless they're trying to control something.
Yeah.
But from a religious aspect, I mean, so the kingdom of heaven is not of this world.
Yeah.
And that can be misused in a lot of different ways. But while we should still live good lives on the planet, the kingdom of heaven is not of this world. That leave God to give God to God, give Caesar to Caesar. Not that doesn't mean submit to Caesar. That means that the government. There's a government's thing. There's a religious part of things, and so the kingdom of heaven is not of this world. And so I think people should keep the end in mind when they're religious coming at some of these issues. I also think that it's a problem. So it depends. If you're coming at the situation where a Christian nationalist perspective, which I personally have a problem with a Christian nationalist perspective. So like to kind of help people understand if it helps at all. I'm Lutheran. Chet and I both grew up Lutheran. Chet's still Lutheran, best of my knowledge. But I'm Lutheran, and I actually have conversations like this with my pastor and stuff. I just was going back and forth in email with the pastor about how do we reconcile Martin Luther and Aristotle. Can we be Aristotelian in logic, reason, objective reality, or are we going to be, or does Luther have a problem with that, and we have to be kind of coming at things from a Plato perspective, where we take things as dogmatic. It's kind of like, instead of we're going to start from blank slate and build through logic and reason and observation what reality is, we're going to state what reality is, and then we're going to, based on our priors, figure out what's going to happen, kind of thing. That's really rough, but so I've been talking to the pastor about how can we reconcile Aristotle and Luther, and so I'm Lutheran. Martin Luther was one of the leaders of the Protestant Reformation. I would claim he is the leader of the Protestant Reformation, where the church had become the church was no longer a religious institution. The church had become a governance / corporate system, where the church was the property of the church. The church was the assets of the church, the organization of the church. The church was no longer that which was meant to serve God, promote God. It was more of a corporate system. And it's a problem. That was a major problem. The Pope was selling indulgences. It was centralized. Pope was selling indulgences and stuff. Oh, you can get out of hell for a while. Now we're starting to mingle this world with the other world, with the kingdom of earth with the kingdom of heaven, where we're mingling them because, you don't want your parent to, you don't want your relative to suffer in purgatory. You can buy an indulgence to get them out for a period of time, and this is all false teaching, heresy. It's all a mess. And Luther accurately identified it, and it comes from Scripture. You know, there's certain things that matter, and so I tend to think of things in three veins. I have politics, science and reason, and religion. I don't necessarily think that they contradict each other or conflict. And I am currently trying to reconcile them into a more unified understanding. Because a lot of times I go to church and I do prayer and all that stuff at church, and then I leave church and then I go to, for example, work, and I'm doing things based on science and reasoning, and it's like, why am I working in a totally different frame? And then when I deal with party issues like libertarian party stuff, I'm working in a politics frame. Why am I separating? So I am trying to unify the theory, but I do think that there is a separation there. Yeah. And I do think that this proclamation, when it starts talking about God's design, creation of the world, according to God, I do think we're starting to mix your kingdom of earth and kingdom of heaven, and I think I do think that that's a problem, and I think that that's an issue that the Catholic Church did before the Protestant Reformation, and I think the current, especially like right now with the evangelical support of like Israel and the things that are happening in the Middle East, these are another example of where where your kingdom of heaven is mixing with the kingdom of earth, and it's a major problem. And yeah, I have a big problem with it. And like, so for example, like internal governance and my wife, I've tried to explain this to her, and sometimes she kind of doesn't quite get it, but I think she's understanding a little bit more. Is that so the Lutheran Church is congregational, it's decentralized to a point. You have your pastor so you have like your central body, and you have your pastors who kind of are ordained and come through, and like the Lutheran Church considers itself the old church. We're like the legitimate church. Like we think the Catholic Church went the wrong way. We think the Orthodox Church went the wrong way. And we're actually, like, the Lutheran Church is and
facetiously
pseudo-pagans. Okay. So, but the way the church is that to try and protect itself from having, like, a central pope, like the Catholic Church has, like, a pope, which it's a lot different than the 1600s versus today. The Pope is a little bit different type of a guy. But the Lutheran Church, the church itself is made up of like its members. So for example, we have a pastor, but the pastor is not the authority of the church. He is a check on the church, and he definitely has a high influence. But for example, let's say you're trying to sell pews. You can't go to the pastor and say, hey, I want to sell you pews, pastor. The pastor has no decision making on who's buying pews. Ain't happening. That's up to the church, the membership of the church, to determine that.
Yeah, and membership can appoint holders or counselors.
And the membership of the church can advise on how they want the teaching to be, the customs. Every church has its kind of like its customs. We have a tradition, but there are variations on that tradition. So it gets kind of complicated. But at the end of the day, I think it's because it's very similar to, if you think about it in a concept like Madisonian democracy or republic, where you have your different branches, you have states in parallel with the federal government and all these things. You have this not really vying for power, in the church, but you have these parallel institutions internal in the church that basically check each other. And then ultimately you have scripture and blah 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 blah. But so but again, I think that's a separate entity from government. The church is of this world. The church is not of this world. Government is of this world. So I do have a problem with the God in there. Now I do I don't necessarily agree with the United States. Well, I don't have a problem with bringing people. Bringing is not the proper term. While I do not have a problem with people from a diverse range of cultures, I don't necessarily think that the theory of diversity is your strength is necessarily, because what kind of diversity are we talking about? You know? Now, if we're talking about religious diversity, but we all hold the same governmental, civic kind of freedom enjoying principles, that's different. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But it's what kind of diversity are we talking about? You know, I am like, for example, let's say the United States is pure libertarian and communists want to come here. Yeah, I'm not for diversity. Communists can stay away. Like, I'm not interested. I don't want you here. I'll do whatever I can to keep you out of here. Kind of thing. So, I don't know. I understand what you're saying as far as like diversity is strength. But I think
it's not quite what I was saying. But
yeah. I definitely think that you can't. I think that there's a big problem with people in the United States, especially the ones that are kind of like the anti-immigration people or like the Christian nationalist people, or even some of the left-wing people who don't want to accept, or even like atheists, but like we could all call it like the progressive left, another group, progressive left, where they are, how do you say this? They want diversity, like diversity of like skin color, of race, but they don't really want diversity of thought. And like the Christian nationalists, they have very similar, like a similar problem. So I don't know. But I agree with you. The United States. I think you said it like you probably said this like 6 months, a year ago. You said it's not a melting pot; it's a stew.
yeah, it's a stew pot.
It's a stew pot.
So yeah, so if you're saying, so if we're a stew, and you're going to say, you know, by God's will as the government, then you are saying that the entire stew has to be potatoes.
Well, mind you, this is just one state, though.
Oh yeah, it's one state.
That's a bit different. I mean, even at the start of the United, so for example, Massachusetts or Rhode Island, they were explicitly religious. They had religious institutions that ran the government. I believe they had a congregational governance system, meaning the members of like the church ran things. Like if you were in a town, I'm just gonna make something up. Let's call it, because I'm a Lutheran, we'll call it Lutheran town. Let's say you live in Lutheran town. The Lutheran congregation, which means members, affirmed members of the congregation, make the rules. And you might be a Baptist. That doesn't mean you have any voting rights. That doesn't mean you have any right to do anything at all.
Yeah.
It's still Lutheran church town, for example. I'm making it up, but that's like a congregational thing. And so I do think the United States does have a religious aspect, and I do think that the United States should have and I'm going to use the term congregational, but we could also say decentralized. But I think congregational governance, I think that's a good way of saying it. So congregational makes you think religion, but think of it more like you have a local organization, which is decentralized from the central portion, and they can or cannot accept members. It's up to them how they do that. And those members are the ones who decide the rules of that area. And then somehow that is in conflict with, the next level of government up and so on and so forth. I'm going to use the term congregational, but I don't know if that's really 100% the correct one. Decentralized is probably the easiest one that people would understand.
Yeah.
But at the state level, saying God, it might not be that big a deal. I do know that, like, for example, like Oklahoma, like a couple of years ago, they said something about like putting the Constitution in the classroom, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, so, freedom of religion, I hate Oklahoma." It's like, well, Oklahoma can declare itself a Christian state, as far as I'm concerned. I don't live in Oklahoma. They can declare themselves a Christian state and do whatever they want. Now, that's where you have a problem, though, is the 14th Amendment imposes the Bill of Rights that's after the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
The 14th Amendment imposes the Bill of Rights upon the states. So whatever your state constitution says, so for example, the Michigan Constitution, I like to use this example because I know it, but like at the federal level, there is no Department of Education. Shouldn't exist. Now, the Michigan Constitution does say that people have the right to an education. That does not mean that you have to have a Department of Education, but that does mean that like it's more justified at the state level. Federal government level, there is nothing up there. State level, yes, education is like a right in our Bill of Rights. But our Bill of Rights also includes, via the 14th Amendment, via the 14th Amendment, our Bill of Rights, so our state Bill of Rights, whatever it has, also has the Bill of Rights of the federal Constitution, because that's imposed upon us through the 14th Amendment. Yeah, Barfo, you are correct. Enforcing religion will be against the First Amendment. It is, and the only reason that is valid at the state level is because of the 14th Amendment. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's the 14th Amendment that imposes the Bill of Rights upon the country as a whole. Before the 14th Amendment, it had to explicitly be in the state constitution. So it had to be in the state constitution, separation, like freedom of religion or separation, whatever. It had to explicitly be in there. So it kind of gets complicated, but
yeah.
So I don't really understand how they can. I mean, it's a proclamation, so it has no power. So I guess maybe that's why they can say that. But I don't think they could pass a law that says that. I mean, see, if you're just doing a resolution, though, it doesn't really mean anything.
Well, I guess all that this proclamation does is rename June Nuclear Family Month. Like,
yeah, they're just trying to say, hey, we don't want this to be Gay Month.
Yeah, we don't want Gay Month. We want
Nuclear Family Month.
Which, okay.
Yeah, fine.
I think it is. No, I disagree with it in that I can understand that it is intentionally meant to stir shit.
Yeah.
My main problem with this, we have the small problems, like it's initially tying the framework to, be based on religion.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But don't really like that government is trying to make an argument based on religion.
Yeah.
And then it is saying, all right, we want family month instead of gay month. Okay, fine. You're just trying to stir shit.
Yeah.
What really I don't like about this is when you put it all together, nuclear family month is nothing to do with the nuclear family. It is using, it's like taking a family, a mother, a father, and two bright-eyed children, and, making them the shield wall that you are crashing all the rage of society against.
Oh, I see. What you're saying, yeah.
It's, you're not saying, clearly, people have an issue with a whole month being dedicated to gay pride.
Mm-hmm.
And they are trying to counteract that. How? Well, we're going to rename the month Nuclear Family Month.
Yeah.
Okay. What's it? How do you help the nuclear family here? How does any of what you're saying in this actually help nuclear family? All you're doing is using them as a proxy to attack the other side. It's just to factionalize.
I mean, you might be ramping up. Like if you didn't say anything, we'd have Gay Pride Month, move on, whatever, who cares? But now that we have this conflict, now all of a sudden every nuclear family is a target of every, I don't know, drag queen in the country.
So what comes out of this?
I think Tim said it best. The best that comes out of this is signaling that certain people are welcome here and gays aren't.
It's entirely to troll the gays. That's kind of where I'm getting at. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, no, that's just all it is. So, it's also Indiana.
Yeah,
and
which is true. Indiana, you couldn't buy alcohol on Sundays.
Yeah.
Until
afternoon.
No, it changed to afternoon, I think, in like 2017 or something.
Okay.
'Cause I was working down in Indiana at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember people talking about it at work, like, "Oh boy, we're going to be able to buy alcohol on Sundays. Oh, that'll be great because you wake up and you're like, oh shit, I don't have any beer for the football game, and it's Sunday.
Should have planned better.
Yeah, I know. We should have planned better, but it never really affected me because, before they made the change, I was not 21, and then after they made the change, I was buying all my booze on a Friday, going home or going back to Michigan, and then I wasn't going to be buying anything on Sunday because I wasn't going to leave the house.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was the religious fundamentalist. Kind of where it came out of.
There's a decent sized religious people there.
Yeah, they do have a. I'm not too familiar with Indiana rule of law, but coming from that religious sense is pretty prevalent there. I mean, Mike Pence was from Indiana. He was.
Yeah, but he Mike Pence though, isn't he evangelical? Whatever that means.
I'm not sure if
To
you're-
me, it means nothing. To me,
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
I don't know. Even evangelical doesn't really mean much to me. I think it's kind of
I think Barfo here was referring to the
drinking.
alcohol on Sundays, which I think so.
I mean, Michigan
And I mean-
forces the bars to close at 2. So.
And Tennessee still has counties that are dry, like Lynchburg, where they make Jack Daniels. As I understand it, it could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it is still a dry state. You can't buy booze in our county.
I know.
Dry county. You can't buy booze in the
Kentucky.
county.
There's some spots.
Yeah.
Like there's some spots in Kentucky where they're like making whiskey.
Yeah.
You can't buy whiskey. You can't drink whiskey in that county. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand the reasoning for all that.
He does. Mike Pence is ridiculous. That guy. Oh my god. So anyway, I think we've beat this proclamation to death. I think from a religious perspective, there is, to summarize, from a religious perspective, there's the kingdom of heaven and there's the kingdom of man.
Yeah.
They're separate. I think from a government perspective, there is separation of church and state. Now, a state in the past, prior to the 14th Amendment, may have been based on religion in some sort, but after the 14th Amendment, the Bill of Rights is imposed upon the states, and therefore probably should be avoided, and constitutionally. And I think also, I do think it is. It is bad practice. I think it's bad practice in the society we have today to justify things based on religion.
Yeah.
Because like if you start based like, don't get me wrong, I think you should definitely like God's "Thou shalt not kill." I think is perfectly valid.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Well, that's
we
good.
can prove that you shouldn't kill without God.
Yeah.
And also, you want to be really careful because if we start just making things laws based on religion, what are we going to start doing? Like, seems like Israel's kind of going down the road of religious extremism. A lot of countries in the Middle East seem to have gone down religious extremism routes. Do we really want that? That's a problem. And also remember,
This country was founded in part because of people trying to escape religious extremism. Protestants and Catholics spent a couple centuries.
it was partially, yeah, but they did found it on religious principles
Yeah.
in part. But also remember that
Continuous
one of the most
growth.
successful countries or empires in history, the Ottoman Empire, they were Muslim.
Yeah.
And they allowed Sharia law, but they also were they were decentralized and they were perfectly fine with a Christian community. I mean, yeah, sure, you might end up getting massacred one day, but they
or
were
have a tax.
you might have a tax,
I
but
forget what it's
they were
called.
perfectly, but they allowed for alternative viewpoints or religions or government systems.
Yeah.
They're like, so long as you paid the king or sultan or whatever his fee, they could care less. So, yeah, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, I think it's pretty clear where we stand on that.
Yeah.
I don't really have much more. Do you have anything else to talk about? I think I'm pretty much done.
Just kind of, put a bow on that, I guess. My viewpoint, which we can flesh this out more.
Yeah.
In later episodes.
Mhm.
And I haven't fully, I don't have a unified theory of this or anything, but
yeah,
my concept of, church and state is basically that, government is at best amoral and more typically immoral.
Okay.
And that, I think you can say from pretty much any religious perspective, whether it's Christian or Muslim or
Buddhist or
whatever. Yeah, you can, you can in broad strokes say government is amoral to immoral.
Yeah.
In that government says it is okay to murder. Pretty much every religion disagrees with that.
Yeah.
The government says, all right, it is okay to murder because we are going to war. It is okay to murder because you are resisting a police officer in a traffic stop.
Yeah.
Now, it can go from amoral, where you have a justified reason for going to war. They are trying to kill us, so we need to protect ourselves from them. So if you kill someone while protecting yourself, to immoral, where I didn't agree, or I didn't like the way you talked back to me during a traffic stop, so I shot you. And government has said, all right, that person was justified in that action.
Yeah.
Now they have declared directly immoral. So I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying that, kind of in sense of the government dogma, it can say, it can set a precedent and then run by that precedent and be immoral.
Yeah.
So if government is trying to make a claim on the basis of morality, I reject it out of hand. I think it should be rejected out of hand because government is inherently immoral or amoral. It is inherently amoral and typically leans toward immoral. But government is amoral. I don't think government itself can ever be better than amoral.
As a
neutral at best, I guess.
okay, as a descriptor of government, I'm in agreement. Yeah, if we're not talking about the should, government should be this. If we're talking about what it is or describing, government is this, blah blah blah. Then yeah, okay, I can follow you there.
Yeah. So
Okay,
I think, and this, and that, I think we put too much of our morality into government, and then we wonder why our society has collapsed into depravities. No, in a lot of senses, that's things that people say, like the good old days when a grandma could cross the street and the young hoodlums would stop and help her. Now a grandma can't cross the street without being mugged by a bunch of hoodlums.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So I think that's people relying on government to do what government shouldn't do.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that lends to like the growth of welfare state and all.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, there would be no problems with hoodlums attacking grandma, and but they would help her across the street if the hoodlums, parents, raised them properly. So it's, I don't know. Yeah, I think we're in agreement. So, but anyway, we'll see. As far as the state goes, good luck to you, Indiana. I'm not moving to Indiana. Have fun with that.
Have fun. I didn't like driving in Indiana.
Yeah. I do have one thing. If you know anybody in Michigan, we have. I know it's hard to see. You can't see on the camera. Yeah, that's true. But the Libertarian Party of Michigan is having its state nomination convention on June 28th in Troy. Go on the MichiganLP.org website. You can sign up shortly. I don't have the sign up live yet, but there is the site's up. And so you can go on there, see what's going on. If you know anybody from Michigan who wants to, yeah, well, who wants to? And I've made a bunch of these postcards that I've been sending. I sent out I sent out 850 postcards in the last couple weeks. So, and I bought 1,000. So I still have potentially, 150 to 200 postcards left. So if anybody wants to go to the nomination convention in Troy, let me know and we'll make it happen. Chuck on money on X or chuckonmoney at gmail.com. Send me a message. And if you're interested in Michigan LP, if you're interested in being a candidate, if you're already elected and interested in switching to LP, it doesn't matter. I don't care. If you just want to see what's going on, you're all more than welcome. Come visit. Reach out, Chuck on Money on X or chuckonmoney at gmail.com. Hit me up. I will mail you a postcard because I got 150 to 200 of these things that I got to get rid of, or else they're going in the trash can. So I'll send you a postcard. You're invited. I'll have a link up online. There'll be short business, nothing crazy on the business-wise. I think next meeting or next episode, we should talk about this a little bit more. So next week, we'll talk about this a little more. But basically, there'll be a short meeting. Then will be followed by nominations, candidate stuff. There'll be a handful of things. But the focus is going to be candidates. And my goal is that anybody who is nominated or interested in running for an office in Michigan, when they walk out of that convention, they're going to have contact to the state level social media. They're going to have contact with resources to help them. They're going to be able to have an elevator pitch. I want people to have an elevator pitch to sell themselves and hook up for how do we handle branding and other things to help promote them. And the big thing is I don't want people to spend the next month or two trying to figure out, how do I get postcards or how do I get signs or I want them to know how to do that stuff or at least know who to talk to that can facilitate and help them there at that day. I don't want them spinning their wheels for months trying to figure this shit out. It's a waste of time. Michigan LP's been a mess for a while, but we're going to get it corrected. We're going to fix this thing. And the people who are causing problems, hear me now. You already know it. You're going to have to settle your differences because I'm going to end it. This is over. I'm done. Done with the bullshit. It's over. So the day is coming. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Time to get to work and do shit.
So I think that's what we should talk about next episode because I know we had a poem to talk about that we potentially were talking about. So we should talk about that poem, which is a deep poem. It means a lot specifically to me and Chad. We should talk about it next episode. We should talk about the candidate convention a little bit and stuff like that. So we'll also find other random stuff like random proclamations that piss us off or stupid podcasts of Dave Smith saying that Massie is going to be the next presidential candidate and will usher in the Ron Paul revolution. Or even better yet, absolute retards, and I'm going to use that word retards, who straight up are like, if the right libertarian ran, we would win. No. You're stupid. You're unrealistic. And I feel sorry for you. I don't think you're a dishonest person. I don't think you're a liar. I think you're lying to yourself, which is freaking almost worse. You're so delusional. So, I don't know. There was a movie, wasn't it like White Christmas that they went to Vermont, right? Was it White Christmas or was it Connecticut?
I think it was Vermont.
They went to Vermont on White Christmas. Okay, the guy who is delusional. Watch White Christmas and hang out in Vermont. Enjoy it. Just stay there and just watch that movie on repeat. On repeat. Just enjoy it. That is the best movie you'll ever have. Enjoy it. Have a great time. Stop talking about libertarians. Stop talking about libertarian politics. Stop talking about trying to get people elected. Just enjoy White Christmas in Vermont, and Bing Crosby can put you to sleep for eternity because you're delusional. Like, or wake up. Or wake up. Maybe he needs to watch what was that? What was that dance they did? The that weird, like, they're trying to do choreography. Yeah. That dude is stuck in a choreography loop, like that weird, like mime like thing. It's whatever's going on. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
I guess I don't quite get why you're telling them to watch White Christmas, but it is a good movie.
Because he's from Vermont, or at least he has control of a Vermont Twitter account, and he can just, and we lost ourselves. He's at least in control of the Vermont Twitter account, and he can just sit there and be retarded.
We're still alive.
So, I don't know. I just think it's delusional, and I also don't understand why. Like, I don't understand how you can't understand the fact that be honest does not mean I think you're a liar. Okay? Be honest means be honest with yourself. In the context, I was very clear about that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if it needs to be said, Archie Flower, you are a lying piece of shit. To help you? Charles Essner said it. Seems done. I think we're done.
Yeah, you heard it here second, Archie. Go to Twitter and reread it if you want to know what he's talking about. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you next week.